Watoto wazuri ni Congo. I welcome you all to lesson 406. And I will keep this introduction brief. However, of course, not too brief to show my continued appreciation, idupe, for all who do participate in the lessons and questions, but who more importantly to me remain active in this mission to liberate our people. So I will say continue your works diligently, and together we will reach that ultimate goal. This being an even number of the 400 series is going to primarily deal with the Hebrew language and its translation back into its proper Bantu Congo language. And normally when I do the lessons in this series, I'm able to fit 2 or 3 in-depth analyses of the words presented. But from time to time, what I'll do when I get more so into the general vocabulary is I'll try to add more words into the lesson without detracting from the quality. Because I'm all about the quality of information received and the quality of education given. Because as our Msazi Mkuu Ivan Van Sertima has said, that our ancestors only accepted perfection. So let us not fall into accepting mediocrity. So though I will add a quantity of words, I will not take away from the quality of information and explanations of them. What I'm going to do is present the spelling in Hebrew, its pronunciation, meanings, definitions, and whatnot, usages from the 2 sources that I'm presenting here. And one is the Practical Guide to Biblical Hebrew, and the other is the Lexicon of the Hebrew and Aramaic language of the Old Testament. And from there, I will, when I do my pronunciations, I'll pronounce them first in Hebrew, or the Hebrew that we know and accept today as Hebrew. But then I will translate them into their Kikongo, Kibantu cadences and rhythms to the best of my ability, so we can get more acclimated and familiarized with the way our languages sound. So even when we see these other languages, we hear our cadences. We know our proper rhythms and pronunciations and the proper usages of our terms. And now, as I've stated before, I'm not a fluent speaker of our languages, unfortunately. So anyone who is able to correct what I'm saying as far as my pronunciations and whatnot, please feel free to do so, because that is what I'm asking for. I'm asking to learn our mother tongues as accurately as I possibly can, because that is what we need when we are trying to search for right knowledge. So anyways, we'll go ahead and start with the word that's spelled in Hebrew as Mem Lamed Aleph. And this is often pronounced Mala. And it means fullness, to fill, abundance. And it's specifically talking about a harvest or about food, such as full ears of grain, wet fields, and full yield of a harvest. And so, well, first I'll say this, the interesting thing here that I'm finding as I'm translating this Hebrew language back into Bantu Congo is that many claim that the Hebrew language originated either in the north, the east, or, as we know as a falsification, the so-called Fertile Crescent. So we'll go ahead and reject that immediately. But what I'm finding is that I'm finding a lot of the terms being translated accurately in isiZulu and other languages in the south of Kukongo. And this is interesting to me because, as I've said before, the Hebrew language, or the people that is speaking about in the cosmology, is universal in Kukongo. However, specifically, we're talking about Omo Yoruba, Olukumi, and Dugomo. But it shows that even prior to the split of them, they also shared the same origins as Amazulu and Baluba and more of our family in the south. And so the connecting point between there is the land that we now call Congo, which, as we should know by necessity, is the origin of all things that we call African. So that being said, the word Mem Lamed Aleph Mala, full, to fill, abundance, of crops, grain, harvest, and whatnot. It stems from the isiZulu, nala, which means abundance of food or a plentiful harvest. And you will see that theme, isiZulu, being very prominent throughout the Hebrew translations. And so also in Shivenda, we have the phrase malakabidi, which means greediness or greed. And then we also have the term malango, which means being choosy about food or being a glutton and whatnot, also being greedy. So as we can see, the root of malakabidi and malango is mala, speaking again about being full of food. So the next word we'll get to is spelled in Hebrew, samek wa pe he. And now, as we know, the P and the F are the same term. So pay and pay and fe are the same. So they're interchangeable. So again, samek wa pe he. And also we have shin wa pe ra. Now, the first word, as we see as sofa, means wind of a storm or a destructive wind. And the second one, more commonly pronounced shafar, means ram horn. And as you know, during the rituals and whatnot, sometimes in the exorcism, if anybody's seen the movie Unborn, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, they'll go ahead and blow the ram horn, the shofar, and it's supposed to conjure up the spirits and whatnot. But anyway, why is that important? Well, because the word for spirit actually comes from the same word, air or wind. So again, in isiZulu, we have the word sepu, which would be to blow about in the wind. Now, this sepu also shares the same root as pepo or isipepo, which means a windstorm, to blow away, a hurricane basically, or something with strong winds. So it's the same exact pronunciation, it's the same exact definition and usage. So then in Ede Yoruba Olukumi, we have the words afefe, which means wind, and then we have efufu, which means a heavy rain with high winds. So again, we are talking about wind blowing and also wind blowing at a high and destructive rate. Next, we have the word spelled kav samek he. And sometimes this is seen as kav samek aleph. Now, the two guides that I have, when you check the sources, my references, the practical guide says that kav samek he, it means throne. And then the lexicon that I have says kav samek aleph means a seat of honor or throne for a king. So as we see, the hey also is pronounced as a vowel at the end, ah or ha at times. And this is often pronounced kasa. Now, again, taking it back to isiZulu, that word kav, which is K, samek, which is S, hey, which is H, or the vowel sound, in isiZulu is actually pronounced kosi, which means king or the paramount chief. So obviously, throne of a king is talking about the king. So then in Ede Yoruba Olukumi, we have the word alakoso, which means person of highest rank and chief. And of course, koso is the root in the same as kosi. Now also in Ede Yoruba Olukumi, we have the term nkazi, which means king or chief. Now this is also in addition to the word oluwa or some of the other words for a chief. Now in Shivenda, Again, another Southern Kukongo language. Shivenda's word is exactly and identical to isiZulu, and it is Kosi. Both are spelled Khosi, and it means the leader or the one in authority. So we know we're talking about the same thing here. Now, also, it is pronounced Nkosi, and of course it means chief. So now, these next two are what I find very telling evidences of some things and falsifications that we need to omit from our accepted ways of learning and thinking about our Bantu Congo. Now, when we speak about Ethiopia, we speak about Amharic, we speak about Oromo, and we speak about these languages, and a lot of people are saying that they're ancient languages and whatnot. Now, they may be old languages compared to European, Cantonese, etc., but they're not ancient in comparison with Bantu Congo. And I say that because the pre-Amharic word for king is Negusa. Now, not only does this show that Amharic is not ancient, but it also shows that Bantu Congo are the true Ethiopian root. See, many don't want to accept the fact that our people in the East were ravaged by the Persian and the other peoples of foreign lands. And the amalgamation of this ravaging, as well as in the South, with the Afrikaans language so-called, some of the languages were amalgamated. But not only that, some of the languages and some of the terms were completely eradicated. So what we have to do is understand that, yes, we may want to accept one paradigm of thought, but we have to look at the reality of our story if we really want to reach these connecting links. So Amharic is not ancient in the sense of what we're speaking about as far as Bantu Congo and the establishment of our lands and our culture. And I say this because Negusa doesn't really sound like Kosi, but we have to look at the word Kosi is pronounced Nkosi. And Nkosi is synonymous with the proper pronunciation of Negusa, which is Ngusa. Do you understand? Now, Ngusa adheres to the Bantu Congo rule. K and G are identical, and so we're speaking about the same word for king. And again, this is before Amharic, Oromo, and other languages of Ethiopia that many people accept to be ancient. So what also adds interest into the word for king, and again, I'm picking general vocabulary, but I'm specifically picking words that are definitive defining links of important aspects of the culture of a people or any people. And of course, a king in the throne would be one of them. So when we look at the word Nkosi, we have in the Cheyenne language of the Americas the term Migisi. Now, you may say, well, how does this coincide with Nkosi? Well, let's work it out here. We're looking at concepts. We're looking at the way our people thought. Well, what is one of the most prominent figures in ancient Kukongo? The hawk. The hawk is literally the origin of the royalty word, Your Highness. Because the hawk, of course, a bird of prey, no natural enemies, but also reached the highest heights. So the king was often referred to as the hawk, which was synonymous with Your Highness. So in the Americas, the hawk in Kukongo was synonymous with the eagle here in the Americas, and that Cheyenne word, Migisi, literally means eagle. So that root, Negusa, Ngusa, can also be pronounced in that Cheyenne language, Migisi, and that root word being the Gisi. Do you understand? So